Hey, this is Kara. Welcome back to part 2 of glazing with ancient copper. Again, I'm using the SM29 blue-green at the base of this cup. So remember, I got some glaze on there. When it's dry, it's easier to just scrape off. If I have a tool, I'll use a tool, but in this case, I'm just gonna use the corner of my apron to clean it off. So red iron glazes, if you try to clean them up with water, they'll usually stain everything. So I try to wait till they're dry to clean them up. Reloading my brush, always doing that a lot. So this is my second coat. And so last time I talked really only about the ancient copper and about how firing changes things. There was a question about how to fire without overfiring everything else. And if you're firing to cone 5, there's really no need to fire any different. You're not going to get the kind of the sparkly crystals at cone 5, but it's still a really beautiful glaze at cone 5 without a slow cool. So there's no need to fire things differently. If you are doing cone 5 firing, you might want to see about putting the ancient copper pieces in the warmest part of your kiln. If you don't know what part of your kiln is the warmest, usually the hottest part of a kiln is going to be near the top because, of course, heat rises. However, it depends. Some kilns fire hotter at the bottom. There are some who do. And if you fire a couple of times with a witness cone in the top, one in the middle, and one near the bottom, you will see if your kiln is firing evenly from top to bottom. And if it is, that is great. And if it isn't, you can kind of take those glazes that prefer to be a little on the cooler side and fire them in the cooler part of the kiln, and find the glazes that like to be fired a little hotter, put them in the hotter part of the kiln. So that way, once you get to know your kiln and how it fires, you can load your kiln and know that the things that like to be a little warmer will be fine, and the things that like to be a little cooler will be fine. It's harder to do in a community situation, but it can be done if you talk to the people who are loading and firing the kilns, and most of them do get an idea of what kinds of things work best at what part of the kiln. So this result, like I said, is a cone 6, but you still get a really beautiful result. No, that is not what I was looking for. Here's the one I was looking for. Aha, here it is. This is cone 5 with a 10-minute hold, and see, that's still a really beautiful result. That's 3 coats, cone 5. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? So another question that several people were asking about last week's results were about my use of a liner glaze. I referred to a liner glaze, but I didn't go into details. So a liner glaze can be any food-safe glaze, but oftentimes it's a plain, either a clear or a white glaze. something that has very low amounts of coloring oxides, just so you don't have a lot of interaction. And liner glazes can be used because it's easier to clean, it's easier to see food. Food usually looks better on a white or light colored surface, and you don't have to worry about any kind of interactions or leaching if you're using a glaze that doesn't have a lot of oxides in it. It's also less expensive, especially if you're using a really fancy and more expensive glaze. You want to use it where it's going to do the most good, which is on the outside instead of on the inside, where it's not going to be seen. So liner glazes can be used for a lot of things. My preferences for liner glazes are things like the Celadons, especially snow or mixing clear, but I also like to use the aqua. Even though it does have oxides in it, the amount of oxides are very, very low. And the glaze formula for Celadon is very stable and non-reactive, so you don't have a lot of different things going on. So just a single unlayered light color glaze is usually a good choice for a liner, something that you really like using. Some people mix their own liner glaze, some people use a commercial glaze, just something that you feel really good about eating off of. So this is still a little bit moist, but I'm going to double check it. Well, looks pretty good. So I will be back at 1:30 with the third part of glazing. If there are any other questions about ancient copper, I would be happy to answer them, or if you have other questions about other glazes, or if you have suggestions for the glazes that I could talk about next week. So I was thinking about either talking about the Celadons next week and how to get the best application of Celadons and what they do really, really well, or we could talk about something else. So if you have suggestions, drop them in the comments, and I'll see you guys in an hour. Thanks.